Hey, what's up guys? Nick the Informative Fisherman here on behalf of Lucky Tackle Box, and today we're going to be breaking down August is Panfish box. Let's get started. Okay, so let's crack this bad boy open, see what we got. We got our normal literature, the Lucky Tackle Box magazine with this remarkably handsome fellow down here in the bottom corner. I am pointing at me and not Flair. Okay, good. Always a cool mag. Good little articles in there. Read that thing. The card that shows the baits that came in the box, and a cool Lucky Tackle Box sticker to stick this on anybody else who has the competition sticker on their car. Only kidding. Put it on your own car or something cool. First things first, the Johnson Crappie Buster Shad Crankbait. Very, very cool bait. I'm going to go through all these real quick, and then I'm going to give you the full breakdown of how I like to fish them, what gear I want, or what jig heads, or what line. I'll break it all down as I go. Then we have a Slater jig. It's a fat little jig. It's like a marabou style jig. Pretty cool. They don't have packaging because they come on long strips in the store and you pop them off if you're wondering why the name's not on there. But Slater jig has been around for a while. Really cool. Lucky Strike swim baits right here. These are yellow. Summertime, yellow stands out in that dingy water. I'll break down how I do all that shortly. The Mustad Duo Locks. These are cool. I've talked about these in another video before. I'll show you how to use them and show you how convenient they are to use by switching a bunch of different lures in and out, back and forth. Normally, I'm not an advocate of this style connection right here, but for these, I am. The Stinger Shads, the Southern Pro. Very cool thick head bait. I'm going to show you how I rig those. And then we have the Matrix Dockside Bait and Tackle Shad. These are really, really cool. A lot of the time, it seems like the majority of panfish lures are designed more around crappie or yellow perch, bigger mouthed panfish, and they don't necessarily target a lot of the bluegill that are in every pond and lake and creek out there that any kid can target, and these little smaller, skinnier baits can target those. And at the same time, perfect example of that, the Trigger X boot tail minnow right here. It's about, looks like about, yeah, 1.5 inches. I was gonna say 1.5, says right there on the front. 1.5 inches, skinny, a lot of ridges, really cool bait. I'm gonna show you how I rig that up. And then we have Lake Lunker's Grubs. You can never go wrong with grubs, and I've been hearing how soft these are, and the softer the plastic is, the more action it's gonna have. So we're gonna definitely break these down and go through all that. It looks like they put a ton of value in this month's box for you, so let's break them down. All right, let's start off with the Johnson Crappie Buster. This is a crankbait. Now, this is on the larger side of panfish lures. This is probably gonna get your trout, your big crappie will definitely eat this. It looks like a relatively small shad, and crappie will eat bigger shad. I've seen them eat 4- and 5-inch shad before, but those are big crappie. That being said, this is a long lip, so it's like a medium diving crankbait, but you could see that the front is square right there. So that longer lip is going to help this crankbait move at slow speeds as well as fast speeds. And it's got real thin sides, so it doesn't displace a ton of water, which helps when it's diving down deeper and going slower. It's going to help this bait still have a lot of action. With that flat lip on the front, it allows you to deflect off of rocks. The flat lip is going to hit and come up and come over. A round lip will hit and deflect and come around, which is good at great depths. A rounder lip is better at greater depths, so you can get down there and hunt around rocks. This I like for rip-rap walls and deflecting off of rock. Bink coming up, bink. Every time you hit a rock, reel it down, hit a rock, pause, reel it down, hit a rock, pause. It looks like a shad that's trapped and wounded in those rocks, and those crappie are gonna get it. Those other bigger panfish are gonna get it. Nice red hooks, stout hooks on the bottom, stout split rings, nice quality bait. This one looks like it's in like a sexy shad type pattern on there. I have it hooked on with a Mustad Duo Lock. Now, I wanna break down the rod and reel and the line I'm using on this. This is 8-pound FluoroClear line. This is a copolymer line. It's got some stretch. I'm not using fluorocarbon. When I'm using 100% fluorocarbon, I'm liking to use a lot heavier baits. Fluorocarbon's stiff, so I like a line that's going to cast well. Copolymer lines cast well, and they have a little bit of stretch to them, which is good when you're fishing for panfish. You have smaller hooks. You don't want to tear it free. You rarely ever use braid pan fishing or 100% fluorocarbon, but from time to time you do. But 9 times out of 10 you're using copolymer or mono. Same thing. They both stretch quite a bit, and it's great for pan fishing. Now, this is a relatively larger lure for pan fishing. So what I like to do is throw it on my bass spinning rod. That's gonna be a medium power spinning rod, something like 7 foot, 6'6" to 7'6" is fine. Like a fast action, bending right up here in the tip. A moderate would be bending in the middle, fast right up here in the tip. And the benefit is, if you're out bass fishing, you can carry these on board. And if you think there's crappie or big panfish in the area or trout, you can throw these, crank them down, deflect them, slow roll, pause, twitch in the middle of the water column, or bounce them off those rocks like I said, and trigger a lot of strikes. So if you're out bass fishing, have some of these in the boat and be ready to cast them out when you see those opportunities present themselves. Okay, here we have the Lake Lunkers grubs. This is around a 1.5, 2 inch size grub right here. And it's got that nice green natural finish. Depending on what color you got, that green natural finish is going to be really good in clear water. Grubs are tried, true, proven panfish, everything bait. I don't care if you're throwing a grub anywhere in the world. I'm not even going to say country, I'm going to say in the world. If you were throwing a 1.5, 2 inch grub like this in a natural color, you are going to catch fish anywhere you go. Pick a spot on the globe and throw a grub, you're going to catch them. Now, what you need to keep in mind, this is August right here. This is the August box. Now, depending on what you're fishing for, a lot of fish move deep in the summer or under heavy cover. When you're throwing a grub, you're not going to push this through heavy cover. You're going to let it more than likely get down deep. So whether you're fishing bluegill, you can fish relatively shallow, and you're going to throw this probably on a 1/32 ounce jig head, 1/16. It's a little bit big for 1/64. I would say a little smaller bait than that would be that size jig head. And if you're fishing deep, 1/8 ounce. An 1/8 ounce jig head's really going to get you down there. And if you really, really want to get down there, fish a 1/4 ounce. Like shell crackers in the summertime are down deep. You're going to want to fish at least an 1/8 ounce to get down there and make sure you're in their face. A lot of the time in the middle of those bright sunny days, those crappie are going to be down there deep or at the bottom of those bridge pilings, and you need to cast it up there with a spinning rod, leave your bail open, and let it free fall right down the side of those pilings with a grub, and that's going to catch you a ton of fish. Cast out, slow roll it in is usually your best retrieval for a grub, but you can also slowly jig them off the bottom. Cast it out, let it fall, hop it up, reel in the slack, hop it up, reel in the slack. And I'm not saying rip it up. You don't really need to do that, especially with crappie. You might tear the hook free. If you go to rip it up, just lift it up, let it fall back down, lift it up, let it fall back down. You're going to catch a heck of a lot of fish on these grubs, that's for sure. All right, here we have the Southern Pro Stinger Shad. Now, this profile right here was always originally designed to mimic a juvenile shad. So if you see a lot of little chrome flashy shad going around in your system, it's really cool. Even this color pattern right here, black shad firetail, I think that's what it's abbreviated, but it's got that pink tail and a nice shad color body right there, which kind of enhances the movement of this light appendage. This thing moves around with very subtle movements of your rod tip, plus it's a really stout body, which is going to show them a little profile, a little thicker body. It's going to be easier to rig on a jig head. That being said, we're talking about these jig heads again, fishing deep. If your fish are deep and it's hot and clear, if that water's dirty, I'm going to give you a tip right now. If the water's dirty in a lake and it's not moving water, if it's not a river and that water's dirty, your fish are going to be shallow. Your panfish are going to look for shallower cover. If that water's clear, they're naturally going to look for deeper cover or something that's going to present shade for all hours of the day, like a boat dock, like a bridge. And like I said, target those areas and you will find those fish. That being said, this setup right here, I'm not going to fish this too heavy. You can fish it on a 1/4 if you want to get down super deep, if your lake's really deep, but I'm going to fish this more than likely on an 1/8 ounce or a 1/32 range, and I'm going to throw that on a light to medium light spinning rod. And I'm throwing it right here. This rod's about 7 foot long, and this is 6-pound copolymer line. What that's going to do is it's going to give me a little bit more sensitivity, and that lighter setup's going to cast that little lighter bait a lot farther. I want to cover some water with this, and this is not a cast and retrieve style bait. There is no bringing it through the middle of the water column and that's going to wag all over. What you have to do is impart the action. Slow jigging. You can also dance it, which is like shaking your rod tip and letting this bounce around on the bottom and shake that tail. But that slow jigging works phenomenally well for these guys. And if you find those shad, cast it out there, count it down. Make it cast, let it count 1-2 seconds, and slowly jig it through the middle of the water column and it'll look like a wounded shad and you'll get a lot of bites. Okay, here we have the matrix shad. This is that little tiny swim bait I was telling you about, and in this month's box you got 2 little tiny swim baits, which is really, really cool. The majority of panfish out there eat little tiny minnows, so this is phenomenal. Now what these guys have done is made a very stretchy, durable material that looks very realistic. It's got a nice little tail on there, real thin appendage in the back, so you're going to get a lot of kick at slow speeds moving this bait around. That being said, it is a tiny bait, so you're going to want to go on the lighter side of the jig heads. An 1/8 ounce is probably going to be too big and too heavy for this. I would say go on the lighter side, which also means you're going to have to throw it on a lighter setup. Something like an ultralight setup with either 2 or 4 pound test. That little tiny jig head right here. I'm going to give you a tip. On those really clean baits, a lot of the time guys see me take out a black Sharpie and I Sharpie my jig head out. Well, you can also throw white, a pure white jig head on a very natural bait. When fish look at white, they don't see the color white. They see UVA reflection. White is the only color that reflects that radiation. That being said, it looks more like a disco ball reflection to them, and then they come up and see that natural bait that they want to eat. Here we have that Trigger X boot tail minnow, that other little tiny swim bait. Really cool is there's a ton of ridges in the back of this, and I'll try to get you an additional close-up of that. And a really, really light plastic. This is so soft. Just look at this. I could just squeeze that thing down flat in between my fingers and it'll retake its shape. That is incredible. This means with a lot of ridges on here, it's going to catch a lot of water. Slow rolling it on those lighter jig heads, just like I talked about with that matrix shad, the same way on this bait. But it also means you can move it slower and it's going to have more action. Even if you drag this thing on the bottom, it's going to be kicking. And the nice part is, if you feel a fish peck it and you're unsure if he has it, you can reel down. The softer you go in the plastic category, the longer that fish is going to hold on to it. It feels very real to them. And when it's spongy in their mouth, they tend to hang on to a bait for a heck of a lot longer. So that's a really awesome bait that Trigger X is got out there for you guys. So definitely give that bait a lot of time in the water, and I have a feeling you're going to catch a heck of a lot of nice panfish. Okay, here we have that Slater jig. Very cool. You know, when you have like a marabou style jig right here with a lot of flash and a lot of hair in there, basically a tied jig. And this is a 16th ounce that came in my box here, which is cool, so I can fish this deeper. And I can fish it on slightly stouter gear. I'm probably going to throw it on that medium light 6.5 to 7.5 foot in a fast action. A little stouter hook on here. And what I was saying about when you have a tied jig like that, these little hackles, that little fur, the little hair that's incorporated on these are going to move even when the bait holds still. So a lot of guys tend to fish these when the water's really cold, but they also work phenomenally well in clear bodies of water. Yeah, you could say that's a really bright color. Well, crappie and a lot of panfish and trout are intrigued by bright colors. They just tend to bite bright colors year round. I always say start natural. If you can't go natural, throw some bright colors at them, and a lot of the time that'll trigger them. A little couple strands of flashing right there in the back, so in the fall it's going to throw a little bit of flash, get them intrigued to come over and strike a bait like this. And that little stouter rod is also going to give you a little better hook set on a heavier bait. These are really cool. You can fish them under a slip float. You can fish them real down deep at the same time, but hand-tied little jigs and little fly setups like this do work phenomenally well in clear water, and they work phenomenally well in really cold water. Now the Mustad Duo snaps are really nice. They have a really nice round bend and they're very small, high quality. Attaching these to the front of your little jig heads or a little tiny crankbait can work great. You just want to make sure you're using one with a round bend on it, just like these Mustad ones. All right, guys, that's it for the August Panfish box. If you're not subscribed to Lucky Tackle Box on Facebook, make sure to give them a like and follow them on there. Get signed up for the boxes. We have bass boxes, fly boxes, inshore, bass, you name it. Go check it out at luckytacklebox.com and make sure to subscribe to their YouTube channel as well. Greatly appreciate you guys watching, and we will see you next time.